You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast devoted to Stephen King and his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss King novels related to the Dark Tower, non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about potential Dark Tower-related adaptations. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com and follow us on every level of social media at TowerJunkiesPod. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and with me today, as always, a long time ago at least, is my co-host and commate, Tiny. Hi, Tiny.
Hey, guys.
Hey! How's it going?
It's going well.
Nice. How did your... How's this hiatus been for you?
It's been fine. Nice. Yeah, not a lot of kinging going on.
Right.
If you will, but.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are here to rectify that.
We are.
Yes. And, speaking of which, today on the podcast, we're going to be reviewing episodes 5, 6, and 7 of Hulu's original series inspired by the work of Stephen King, Castle Rock. Castle Rock was a show that was on Hulu last year, and we got through reviewing about half of it, just shy of half of it, and before we went on our impromptu hiatus. But now we're back, and we're gonna we were doing two reviews every episode of the podcast, but now for sake of time, we're just gonna review. We're breaking up the last 6 episodes of the season into 2 podcast episodes. So we're reviewing episodes 5, 6, and 7. So before we begin with that, check-ins. Tiny, it's been a while.
Yes.
Do you have any Stephen King check-ins for us?
I can't really remember where I was when we stopped recording. The latest thing I finished was Elevation. What was that called?
Mm-hmm. Elevation.
Elevation. Yeah. I can't even remember.
Yeah. I haven't read or listened to that one yet.
Right. So I finished the newest novella.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished listening to Tommy Knockers as well several months ago. That's all I've done. I feel like it's been a while since I've done anything King related.
Wow.
Or watched any stuff or read anything. It's been a little while.
Mm-hmm. Are you wanting to or excited to change that?
Yeah, because I think for the podcast we're gonna talk about some other stuff. I think we're gonna watch some movies, and there's a new Stephen King movie coming out to theaters very soon.
Oh yeah, here in like 6 or 7 weeks.
6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah.
So.
Pet Sematary.
Pet Sematary, right. Yeah. So yeah, we'll be talking about that a little bit.
Totally.
Hopefully the book, the old movie, and the new movie.
Yes.
I think we're gonna
do is on the docket.
A trilogy of Pet Sematary.
Yes.
So.
A lot of dead cats.
Yes.
So that's going to be
the best
exciting.
kind of cats.
Yeah. What's it now?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. The official mascot of the Obsessive Viewer podcast.
Yeah, well.
Is a pizza roll cat.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway, so that's exciting. What's up next? Like, what's the next thing you're going to listen to or read?
I'm not sure. Probably. I think I want to say I have Firestarter. What else do I have? I have like two King books on my Audible.
Yeah, how many?
Spoiler alert, I canceled my Audible. I think that that happened during the hiatus. I canceled my Audible.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unfortunate, but at the same time, it allowed me to do AMC A-List.
True.
So
yeah.
I have The Talisman, Needful Things, and Firestarter.
How many overall books on Audible do you have for Stephen King? Like you can, if your app is similar to mine, you can just search and type in Stephen King, and it should have like library and how many are in the store.
1, 2, 3, 12, 13. I have 13.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to guess how many I have?
21.
Oh, good guess.
Really?
Yeah, it's 40.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
You dick. Wow, 40.
Yeah, I went on kind of a tear. The thing with that is that on Audible, if you have the Kindle version of the book, like obviously like on an audiobook without a membership is like $30.
Right.
But if you have from most of Stephen King's work, if you have like the Kindle version of it, which I have a ton of Stephen King books on Kindle, the Audible version is only $13.
Okay.
And like my rationale is that like, okay, well, I can use a credit that costs $14 or $15, or I can just spend $13 on a book.
Yeah.
That I already have.
Gotcha.
But yeah, 40, and I'll just kind of go into my Stephen King check-in if you want.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I also canceled my Audible subscription, and I'm probably I'm getting ahead of myself. Today I re-upped it.
Okay.
Just because I really wanted it. Cause I've listened to the audiobook for it, but it is not a legit copy.
Okay.
So I do have like a file that has like a ton of audiobooks, but I want them all like, I'm a collector. I want them all in the Audible app. And what I've been doing is recently I've been listening to audiobooks in the background while I work, because my work is like the job that I have is just very data entry specific, and it's just like it's a lot of just plugging in numbers and typing stuff. And so for a long time I was listening to podcasts and everything, and then like I'm kind of going through a kick now where it's like, okay, well, I don't know if I can focus my full attention on an audiobook and do my work. But I can play an audiobook for a book that I'm familiar with, that I've read before, and have it play in the background. So, like, in the past 2 weeks, I've listened to Carrie, Salem's Lot, Under the Dome, and yeah, those are the only three. But I bought it specifically because I want to do that with it.
Nice.
I want to do it. And, sorry. So, but kind of an addendum to that, I started the Tommyknockers today.
Nice.
Yeah, and that was this is my first time listening to it. I started listening to it when you started listening to it.
Yeah.
But I just kind of tapered off. Hiatus.
Yeah.
Sorry. But it's interesting because I got like 3.5 hours into it, and like I could hold my attention and do my work and everything. So I think I'm going to finish that pretty soon. Nice. Yeah, so I'm excited.
That's good.
Yeah. That's really my only Stephen King check-in. I've been, yeah, that's about it. I bought Revival in paperback, and it in paperback too, because I'm a sucker.
Yeah. A collector again.
A collector, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to buy the 2017 movie tie-in edition because they're presumably going to have another tie-in edition this year. Yeah. For It Chapter 2, and I kind of want that as a collection. Like, yeah. Both of them.
Totally.
So that's my Stephen King check-in for the week, and that's our Stephen King check-ins for the week. And yeah, so let's dive into our reviews of Castle Rock episodes 5 through 7.
Yep.
Castle Rock, for those who don't know, it's based on the stories of Stephen King. The series will intertwine characters and themes from the fictional town of Castle Rock. We're going to go episode by episode. We're going to do episode 5, 6, and 7. We will be spoiling the episodes. So if you haven't seen Castle Rock at this point, why are you listening to the podcast?
Yeah, really.
But also, if you haven't seen these 3 episodes, pause the podcast, go watch them on Hulu, come back and listen to our reviews of them. So, you've been warned. So let's dive into it. So, episode 5, Harvest. It aired on Hulu on August 8th, 2018. Director is Andrew Bernstein and writer is Lila Bayok. The premise is a stranger comes to town. Castle Rock honors Sheriff Pangborn. So overall, Tiny, what did you think of this episode?
Pretty good. I don't think there were any like weak episodes in this whole season.
I agree.
So, pretty good. I think, the whole not sure like what the theme of the episode is or anything like that, but just the ongoing mystery of the kid or whatever and the boy and what his deal is just growingly and just increasingly intriguing. And this adds to that, obviously. The fact that he's out now, and it's like, it kind of adds to the tension and frankly, the kind of like the fear, the kind of horror aspect of the show is, I think a lot of it revolves around him because he's so mysterious and so many bad things happen around him. And then just also the ongoing discovery of the past of Pangborn and who he is and what he's done in the past is again just really driving the story a lot. So yeah. Yep.
And this episode has some more. We're going to kind of jump around a little bit. I think I've got a ton of notes here, but I want to touch on the. Okay, let's start with the kid being released, and this was something that I wouldn't say didn't connect with me, but like in the moment, I found it interesting that like there was reports of the wildfire and everything that was going on. And like in retrospect, that's like, okay, well, that's the natural response to the kid being released from prison. Like it is literally like setting the world on fire.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I was like, is that going to like spread to Castle Rock? Like what, like how is this going to come into play later in the season? And it never does.
Yeah.
But I reconcile that by thinking that, well, it's because the kid was released and it's just showing that he has chaos surrounding him like that.
Right.
Did you pick up on any of that, or did you have any takes on that?
I mean, again, it's all mysterious, and it's not like there's nothing blatant that says, he caused the fire or like it's because he was released, but you can't ignore you can't just chalk it up to coincidence, I think.
Right.
And so it's part of the mystery. So I did pick up on it, but it is a little interesting that it wasn't really addressed that much later on.
Right.
It just it's like just another crazy freaking thing that happened in this town.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Another thing I want to bring up is since the kid is released and everything, he kind of makes some rounds.
Yeah.
Is that the episode where let me check here.
He just goes into that house where that family is. Yeah, that's one of the most disturbing parts of the whole season. That's what I was going to say. It was so eerie. I think the fact that they chose to use audio as opposed to showing us was even more effective somehow.
Yep.
Which sounds strange, but just the audio of the conflict, the family fighting and killing each other basically, is just horrifying. It's really horrifying. But yeah, that jumped out at me, and I wonder if, I mean, I have it in my notes, like, does he, I don't know if it's, if those things happen, like the fire and the prisoner that he was bunked up with being killed and the prison guard going crazy and these people killing each other, is he doing that intentionally? Is he unknowingly doing it? Is it just a result of his presence? Like it's mysterious, but I don't know. Part of me wonders, I feel like they give you little snippets of his inner monologue or what his thoughts are. And it's like, sometimes I feel like he's intentionally like causing these things or doing these things on purpose, or like he has no control over them. And so like, is he the source as to why the town is so horrible and like why so many bad things happen there, because he's been kept in the cage in the bottom of Shawshank for so many years? Like I don't.
Yeah.
Like it's part of the mystery, and I'm not sure what to think. I'm curious if anybody has any theories.
For me, it's one of the most compelling parts of the whole season.
Right.
And what I had fun doing this time around, because we do get some semblance of ambiguous closure, if that's my rap name, but at the end of the season, but it's still left open-ended. It's ambiguous and everything, and it's interesting.
Well, and like towards the end of the episode, when he the kid and Pangborn meet in the forest.
Yeah. Oh my God, that scene.
Which was just like, ooh, like edge of your seat shit.
So good.
Like the kid clearly has some idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
And like he can talk and he can perceive things, and it's just like, but he seems like this deaf mute kid 90% of the time.
Yeah.
But then like he runs into Pangborn and he remembers him from him opening the trunk 30 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just weird to me that he doesn't speak up. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Like, tell us what's going on. I don't.
Well,
is he just like some silent harbinger who just brings chaos and death? And it's compelling, and I like the direction they're taking it. But I'm getting to the point where in episode 6 or episode 5 like this, and then continuing into 6 and 7, like I'm getting to the point where like I want some answers. Like I need to know more, and it's kind of grating on me a little bit, or wearing me down a little bit, and it's starting to get to me.
See, in preparation for the relaunch of the podcast, really, I rewatched the season from the beginning and made my notes like in chronology. Like I rewatched from the beginning, and then when I got to episode 5, I started making my notes. And what I will say is that I like that. We've made no secret of our love for Lost in this podcast.
It automatically made me think of Lost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like the ambiguity, the quiet, like non-answer, like mystery wrapped in a riddle kind of thing. Just it's so Lostian. Like it is the most Lost thing, and it like in this episode, I was wondering because I couldn't really remember how the season ended. Well, I not necessarily couldn't remember how it ended, but I couldn't remember. If there were parts that the show clarified in the end run of the season, but like, okay, this episode starts, one of the early scenes is a flashback to, Warden Lacey spouting his religious zealotry to the kid, and he's trying to justify his actions and why he has him held captive and everything. And, first of all, I love that because it's expressing this doubt that he has of whether or not what he's done is right. Cause like you said, the kid doesn't talk. Like he doesn't know for certain that he's, the devil. It's just all based on faith.
Right.
But another thing about that is that like you have this expression of doubt, and then Warden Lacey touches the kid. I don't remember how, like, I think he just pats him on the shoulder or something like that. And like, that made me think, like, I was trying to piece together, like, was this, like, the morning that he went and killed himself? Like, is that why he killed himself? Like, how did that, like, did that come into play somehow? And I feel like the show was misdirecting us or wanted us to feel that way and feel that ambiguity because it wants to keep us on our toes with the truth of the kid and everything. But yeah, and then we get him wandering the town, and the family murder thing just freaking crazy.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. And let's talk about, well, really quick, the wildfire, when they're at the ceremony for Pangborn, there's this creepiness to like all the townspeople with masks on.
Yeah.
Like they're just medical masks. It's because of the wildfire. There's nothing supernatural or creepy about it, like on the surface. It's like it's a piece of set design. But there's something unsettling about it nonetheless.
Totally.
But one of the big things in this episode that I want to touch on is we get more backstory for Jackie Torrance.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So this is where we get like her origin, basically. She's the niece of Jack Torrance, and she tells the kid that her uncle tried to axe murder his family. So she, like her real name, I forget what her real name is.
Bernadette or something.
It's something like that. It's not Bernadette. It's like Danielle. I don't know. But anyway, she's like, so I took the name Jackie Torrance as kind of a fuck you to my parents.
Right.
Which is great. But like in that moment, how did you feel about that backstory?
Well, I will be disappointed if it's just an Easter egg, quote unquote Easter egg.
Interesting.
Like I hope it goes somewhere. I hope it's relevant to the future of the show, and I hope she's relevant. You know what I'm saying? Like her presence hasn't had much of an impact on the show. She's just kind of there. Like things just kind of get bounced off of her.
Yeah.
She's not a super relevant character yet, but I think I hope she's not just in the show because she's Jack Torrance's niece. Like I hope she's not just an Easter egg, and that's just a dropped fact about her. I hope she's significant later on because she's Jack Torrance's niece. Mm-hmm. I guess. I don't know if I'm wording that right or.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And what's interesting is like the show itself is an anthology show. So like next season's going to be presumably a new cast, new story. I think they actually said it's going to be a whole new cast, whole new story and everything. But I would hope that given the way that Jackie Torrance is she's kind of like the one who's, I wouldn't say in on everything, but she's like the one that she's kind of the audience conduit. Like she's the Stephen King fan conduit.
Yeah. She's kind of like Jamie Kennedy in Scream.
Yeah. That's a really good comparison.
Yeah.
And not to jump ahead too much, but like the season ends with her, like there's a scene, a mid-credit scene with her that like when I saw it, we'll talk about it the next episode, but when I saw it, it just floored me so much. But I think it would be cool if like, what if she's the constant of the anthology series?
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, like what if she's brought back for season 2 and she's just kind of doing her Jackie Torrance thing, just walking around and stuff.
Right. Or maybe she's younger or older.
Yeah.
Played by a different actress or something.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say, and this is kind of, this will be debunked or kind of, my issues with this will be addressed next time on the podcast. But, in the moment when I watched this episode and she's telling the kid like that her uncle tried to axe murder his family, like it just in my head, I was just like, I really wish she didn't say axe murder. Cause that's the movie. That's not the book. In the book, he had a croquet mallet.
Yeah.
And I was so, like, I don't know. It bothered me a little bit cause I was just like, I want it to be, Stephen King, the book, not the movie.
But Jack Nicholson with the axe chopping down the door and saying, "Here's Johnny," is probably the most iconic thing related to The Shining.
Yo, 100%.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And like I said, in an episode to come, like it's paid off in an interesting way. So it's like it negates my complaints with that. But in the moment, I was just like, man, why couldn't she just say,
I agree.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Pangborn's ceremony thing. And what kind of jumped out to me about it is he uses an analogy of like a magician palming an ace or something like that. And I thought it was funny because he's being presented as this pillar of the community. He's being honored and stuff like that. But I feel like he's a guy who did some shady shit in the past. Yeah. And it's funny because like he says, I never would have been a good magician. I could never palm an ace or whatever. And I was like, I feel like that's kind of exactly what he did. And it was just kind of a funny, wolf in sheep's clothing kind of moment, sort of. Not that he's I think he's kind of an ambiguous character. Like, I think he had good intentions with almost everything he did. Yeah. But I think some of the stuff he did could be very questionable.
Yeah. From his perspective, he has gone decades just believing that he covered up a murder that was committed by a kid.
Right.
Like he was under that assumption, and he also saw the kid.
Right.
He stopped Warden Lacey, and like he's been wrestling. I like the juxtaposition of Warden Lacey and Pangborn in that they're both kind of wrestling with like, did they do the right thing? Like, did he like just let this? I think the way he says it is like, did I let this monster go with this kid in a trunk?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Or is the kid the monster?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And I think I think his attitude towards the kid reflects that, because I feel like he's very, antagonistic towards him.
Mm-hmm.
He understands that I think he understands that he can get some answers from him, but he's constantly calling him an asshole and a bastard and just cursing at him. And it's like, he's pissed off because he doesn't know how he's supposed to feel.
Yeah.
So he's automatically, he's kind of a tough kind of guy, and he's got that, gruffness, grittiness to him. And so he's like, all right, Dick, what are we doing? Like, come on. Like, he's very, he's just very, standoffish because he doesn't understand what's going on. And a person like him who doesn't understand something is antagonistic towards it.
Right.
And I think it's like kind of the perfect attitude for him to have.
Mm-hmm. It's very gruff.
Gruff. Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate, Scott Glenn working with, Skarsgård.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
There's a scene in this episode where where Pangborn is talking to, I believe he's talking to Henry, saying that he's talking about when he came back to Castle Rock. It was after he left, and I'll just run through basically what he's alluding to and everything. Is that he says that he left Castle Rock, and then he got a call saying that someone heard gunfire at Ruth's house, and so he came to Castle Rock, knocked on the door, and the way he puts is that your mother came to the door looking like she'd been through hell and back. She put her arms around me and begged me not to leave. And fuck, I love that.
Yeah.
Because, in episode 5, in Harvest, that's just building their relationship. That's building the history of Ruth and Pangborn. But when you go back and watch that, knowing the context of the scene, given what happens in episode 8, the Queen, or episode 7, the Queen, it's beautiful. It's really just great.
Yeah.
Really love that storytelling. And that narrative device.
Yeah. There was something I noticed, and this is just kind of a sort of a nerdy thing I noticed, I guess, but, at 2 different points in the episode, the kid has kind of like a neurological test that he goes through.
Yeah.
And so does Henry.
Yeah.
And there's the scenario where the doctor asks them to repeat 5 words. Mm-hmm. And it can be in any order. And it's the same 5 words for both of them.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the words are face, velvet, red, church, and family.
Okay.
And it's like, they both, I think it's the same words. I can't remember. But I think they both say them in the same order, but it's not the same order that
interesting.
That the doctor read it off to them. Huh. I think the doctor said face, velvet, red, church, family, but they both said face, velvet, church, red, family, or something like that. And it's like, I don't know if there's any significance there.
Is that nerdy?
Is that any? I didn't know if that was an Easter egg or maybe somebody picked something up from that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
The best I could think is that it could be kind of a, maybe not hint, but kind of a somewhat of a clue to the structure of episode 9, which we'll get to next time.
Okay.
Interesting.
I don't know. Just something I noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see. Okay, so we get the scene where the kid is standing on a roof, and he's kind of hearing memories of Zalewski and the dog from the ceremony that freaked out when Ruth jumped from the bridge. And he tells Molly, I shouldn't be here, I should still be in the hole. And I kind of like how the kid has this, at least this presumption, or he's putting forth this idea of this conflict he has over this supposed power he may have to create chaos around him. I kind of liked that because it really, again, it goes back to the mystery of the show and how it's really kind of contingent on whether or not we believe the kid or what we think the kid is. So.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't read into that much or pick up on that. I remember that. I remember that part, and he also, I don't want to jump ahead, but he mentioned something about in the next episode, I think in episode 6, about there should be a monument built to Warden Lacey, and which is a creepy, like,
such a cool scene,
Stockholm syndrome type thing to say. It's like, what the hell?
Okay, that's interesting. We'll talk about that because I think you may have misread it.
I think I did.
Yeah, or maybe I misread it.
I wasn't sure what to think about it.
Okay.
That's the thing, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay. But let's get to the end of this episode.
Yeah.
First of all, Alan Pangborn is drunk by the bridge, and there's a scene, like you see the plaque that they have for the bridge, and it says Alan Pangborn Memorial Bridge, which I thought was weird because he's not dead.
That is weird.
Yeah, I have no idea why it's a memorial bridge, but nonetheless, he takes it down and throws it into the river or lake or whatever, the river. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that, but we get the big end scene is him confronting the kid in the woods.
Yeah.
And like you said, don't look at me like that, fucker. You know me.
Yeah.
Just, God, he's such a badass.
He really is.
So there's a line that he says where he's talking about how he was like burdened with like whether or not who the monster was in that scenario.
Right.
And he says, like, did you pick up on the It reference?
I don't think I did.
Okay. Alan has been burdened with the choice he made 27 years ago. Which I love that because 27 years, it comes back every 27 years.
Yeah.
And just like the added meta-ness of Bill Skarsgård being the kid and Pennywise is just, it's great.
Right.
And there was a theory that like a friend of mine said that like they thought like they were so certain that the big reveal was going to be that he was actually Pennywise.
Oh, okay.
And that it tied into it. But,
wow.
Yeah. But anyway, the dialogue goes that he asks if he's the devil and the kid says no. And I love this line because Scott Glenn's just like, then what the fuck are you?
Yeah.
He's just so, like you said, he's so gruff and standoffish.
Right.
But the scene ends with, like, Pangborn could have killed him,
mm-hmm.
but the kid is like, I can save her or I can help her regarding Ruth. And like that last shot of the episode with the kid and Alan just silhouetted by like this moonlit fog in the woods was just like, I want to frame that shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, what did you make of that final scene, that confrontation? And do you think, like how much of that do you think is the kid playing Pangborn?
I still just don't know what the hell the kid is. I don't know what, he's too mysterious to me. And like I said, it's grating on me a little bit.
That's so
throughout the season. Yeah. Which is hypocritical of me to say for, like you said, this is very Lostian.
Right. But then again, it's been like 8 years since we watched Lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I am watching Lost for Obsessive Viewer.
Right. Okay. But I think it's funny because I feel like the way that Pangborn is reacting to him is kind of how I'm reacting to him. Like, what the fuck are you? Yeah. Like, I'm kind of feeling the same way.
Sure.
But I don't have the same gruffness as him, to keep using that word.
Oh, Tiny. Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah. But anyways, like I appreciate it, and I think that's why that scene stands out so much, because I feel like I guess I'm projecting my own interpretation on it or my own feelings on it, but I feel like as the audience, that's how we feel. Like, what the fuck are you? Like,
right.
We're ready for some answers, and that's what that scene personified to me, or surfaced.
The reaction that you got, the reaction that the scene got out of you.
Right.
Okay.
I was like, thank you. Someone finally asked, what the fuck are you?
That's so interesting to me because I'm the opposite. Like, I'm so along for the ride.
Really?
And like, I think that maybe it's residual Stockholm syndrome from Lost because I was conditioned for 6 years to just go with the flow and not overanalyze the mysteries in Lost, which I didn't overanalyze the mysteries, or I didn't let it affect my enjoyment of the show. Mm-hmm. Not to say that you're overanalyzing anything or anything like that.
Okay.
It's just that's how my mind has been wired to perceive entertainment is like, oh, I don't know anything about what the fuck's going on. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, again, just that Lost vibe. It just has that feeling. Like, in my check-in, I mentioned that I've been listening to a lot of Stephen King audiobooks that I'm familiar with. So I just recently, like this morning, finished Under the Dome. And I tweeted about this at Tower Junkies Pod on Twitter, but it's an interesting thing to like read or listen to Under the Dome being a Lost fan, because we both loved Lost. Lost I credit with kind of reigniting or kind of stoking the flames of my Stephen King fandom, because it's so like it's so intrinsically tied to the Stephen King feel. And the writers of Lost were heavily influenced by King. And what's interesting to me is that like going from when Lost was on, I was eating it up, and I would read a Stephen King book and be like, oh, this is great because it kind of reminds me of Lost, and it's great. Like, I love this style of storytelling. And then jump ahead to like reading Under the Dome for the first time, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is great storytelling. This is really great Stephen King book. Also, it reminds me of Lost. Or also it could be the next Lost if it's adapted to TV. Mm-hmm. It's just interesting because like, I'm going off on a tangent here. I'm sorry, but the going back and reading Under the Dome, I can tell that King had a lot of. I'm going to circle back and relate it to this. Don't worry. But I can tell that King was. I can only imagine he was influenced by Lost to write, like in some parts of Under the Dome, like it's very heavily like feels like Lost, because it's a single location, it's isolated, it's mystery based, it's power struggles and everything.
Ensemble cast.
Ensemble, yeah, all that. But what's interesting to me is that Lost was influenced by Stephen King. Stephen King presumably drew influence from Lost to write Under the Dome, or write pieces of Under the Dome and everything. And then they adapted Under the Dome into a TV show that was just not to my liking. Like, it could have been, like, we championed it as being like, this could be an adaptation of Under the Dome, could be the next Lost.
Right.
And what's interesting to me is that was back in like, what, 2013, I think?
Something like that.
And it was definitely 2013. And like, that was such a disappointment. Like, the TV show of Under the Dome was such a disappointment and just wasn't, like, it did not live up to what the source material could have allowed it to be.
Not at all.
Which is a premium Stephen King adaptation. But also, that was 2013 when we didn't have good Stephen King adaptations,
right,
for the most part. So it's interesting because like while reading or listening to Under the Dome, I kept thinking like in the back of my mind, I had that like little nagging voice saying like, this could be such a great TV show. This could be the next Lost. And then like, what was kind of quieting that voice was the feeling that like, I don't need another Lost. I don't need this to be adapted because Castle Rock is scratching that itch so well.
That's true.
Because it's Stephen King. It's Lost vibes. And it's just, it's exactly the type of show that I would gravitate to and love. And it's great that we got that out of a Stephen King property, finally. So that's episode 5, Harvest.
Yeah.
Let's go on to episode 6.
Yes.
So episode 6 is titled Filter, aired on Hulu August 15th, 2018. Director Kevin Hooks and writers Vinnie Wilhelm and Mark Bernardin. The plot summary is Henry's son visits from Boston. A funeral stirs up unsettling memories. So Tiny, let's talk about, first and foremost, the, what I think is such a cool bit of casting. Did you catch who, like, did it register with you who was cast as, Henry's son?
Yeah, it's, Michael from It, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chosen Jacobs is his name.
Okay.
He played Mike Hanlon in It. And what's great is, like, it's awesome, cause, like, he's in It, and Bill Skarsgård is Pennywise. And, like, there's a scene where he sees him out the window, and, like, he's set, like, it's just like this meta thing that like he feels like uncomfortable around him. Not that it's saying that like, oh, a different universe, they're adversaries or anything.
Right.
But it's like, just like the meta aspect of that is just so cool to me.
Definitely.
And it was such a surprise too when I first saw it because I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so what did you think of this episode?
Well, in regards to, I liked kind of the science-y fiction kind of stuff of this episode, if you will. I liked, towards the end, the whole filter thing and the schism and stuff like that was really fascinating to me because I'm always more interested in the science than the spirituality or supernaturalism or whatever. Like the science fiction jumps out to me more, but I'm also, curious about I like the dynamic of having Wendell introduced into this dynamic, that the whole dynamic of, he's a young black kid and he's with a woman who has Alzheimer's or dementia, and she's thinking back to when her young black son, her time is being mixed up. And so it's like, it's funny because I wonder, I feel like the reason that Henry brought his son there was selfish more than anything. Because I think he said that, he wants his son to remember his grandmother before she gets really bad.
Right.
And I understand that notion, but I feel like it's that decision is only good for he and his son. It's actually, he needs to be helping his mother. And I think adding Wendell into that equation makes it harder on her.
Yeah.
And
I can definitely understand that.
That just kind of irked me. Not like I don't have a creative problem with it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm kind of shitty at Henry for doing that to his mother. Like that's kind of a dick thing to do or whatever. I understand his reasons. Like again, it's kind of like Pangborn. I think he had good intentions sort of, but I think it sort of made a difficult situation worse by bringing him into that equation. Like I feel like it's going to further confuse his mom.
Yeah. And I don't know if
it kind of does.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I don't know if this is something that I actually drew from the episode or something that I'm kind of projecting onto it or what have you. But, part of me kind of feels like maybe, and again, this could be a misread of it completely, but it kind of feels like, okay, well, he has Wendell there to babysit her while he's off doing his, Castle Rock stuff.
And that happens.
Stuff. Yeah, exactly.
He does that. Yeah.
I will say that I really liked the scenes with Wendell and, Sissy Spacek with Ruth.
Definitely. That was the silver lining of it is that, he's an inquisitive kid.
Right.
And so he asks her questions. He asks his dad questions and stuff like that. I kind of thought we were going to get some more background or get some kind of juicy factoids about Henry because his son Wendell asked him about his biological parents.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's kind of dropped. And like, I wondered, if it's going to come up in later episodes or if it, another season even. But I thought it was kind of his reaction to that where he was like, Grandma and Grandpa are my real parents and stuff like that. I was like, he kind of avoided the question.
Right.
So is there something there? It makes me wonder if there's something there.
It's funny because my read of that wasn't mystery at all. Like wasn't mysterious at all. I just thought my note is, quote, Grandma and Grandpa are my real parents, end quote. And my note is, that's pretty sweet, really. Like it's sweet that it's just like he was adopted, but his birth parents do not register with him on his conscience at all.
That's true.
But let's backtrack a little bit because the episode kind of starts with, it doesn't really start with, we're going to jump around a little bit here, but, okay. So yeah, there's this whole thing where it opens with, a flashback to, Matthew Deaver giving a sermon and intercutting with the kid kind of rummaging through stuff in the house after Alan brings him back there and everything. And Alan's so desperate to help Ruth. Like, I thought that this was really interesting because he's so desperate to help Ruth that he's literally making a deal with presumably potentially the devil. And the big thing, he asks the kid, oh, what do I need? How are you going to help her? And then the kid's just you need to go, and it's revealed that you need to go to Syracuse to get Warden Lacey's car.
Right.
From the junkyard. And, it's really kind of interesting because you wonder if the kid's fucking with him.
Is it like a red herring?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have my thoughts on it. We'll kind of touch base on all that next time because when we review the rest of the season. But yeah, I don't know. I love the companionship shared between Pangborn and Ruth. Like,
it's very touching.
It is, and he's willing to do anything for her. And
she cuts through his gruff exterior.
Exactly.
Which that should be his name, is gruff. We keep using that word.
Right.
But it's the best adjective to describe him.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that I had noticed that as well. That jumps out throughout throughout the whole season. He's a very antagonistic character.
Yeah.
Everyone he interacts with, he's very standoffish and all that. And I feel like most people just kind of don't like him that much. But when he's with Ruth, he's kind of a sweet guy.
Yeah.
In the next episode, there's more of that.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying. So, yeah, Scott, I mean, just speaks to Scott Glenn's charisma, acumen as an actor. Very, very talented guy.
Absolutely. Also Bill Skarsgård's performance, like something that I noticed when watching this episode, this is the episode where they, take him to Juniper Hill. But what's interesting to me is that, like, my notes here says that Bill Skarsgård's performance is so strong. We're 6 episodes in, and he's had maybe 4 lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
The whole season. But every time he's on screen, he is totally captivating and just like he does this thing with his body where he's kind of like hunched over.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's really a commanding presence and an intimidating presence for such a small guy. Like, there's such a sense of power behind him.
Right.
That's not understandable to us or the people in the show. And I really appreciate that in his performance.
It's a little bit monstery, villainous kind of, body language.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's talk about him going to Juniper Hill real quick. I laughed really hard both times I watched this, or a few times I watched this episode, because Henry he is talking to the Juniper Hill nurse, and he's like, he points to the kid, and he's like, the line is, well, here he is.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I don't know, it's such a funny way to just consider, like, no one knows what his name is. He doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we get the shot of the crow or raven or whatever falling out of the sky. That was great. Okay, so let's talk about Alan at the junkyard real quick. I kind of wish this is just real quick, just a couple like references. Like, I feel like there was a missed opportunity that there could have been like a Stand By Me reference or the Body reference. Like have it be Milo Pressman's junkyard, but it wasn't. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Christine.
Or Christine, yeah.
Christine reference, yeah. Plymouth Fury in the background.
Yep. That could have been, yeah. But there was, like, when he's telling the guy to lower the car and that he wants the car, the guy gets out of the truck and he says, this car is going to Fat Tony. And like, I don't know, maybe it's a reference to a King character in another medium or whatever. But all I kept thinking was like, in the back of my head, I was like, is that a Simpsons reference?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Hasn't Stephen King been on The Simpsons?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
At least once.
Yeah, at least once.
That's what I thought.
I think, yeah.
So maybe it is.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so before we get into the whole filter stuff, I do want to touch on Molly and Henry. Molly is haunted by the ghost or apparition or vision of Matthew Deaver. Right. And she sees him early in the episode. She sees him outside the window of the loft she's in, or the warehouse or whatever. Which I don't know. Maybe this is a stretch, but I kind of wonder if that was a Salem's Lot reference. Cause she's on the second floor and there's that scene in Salem's Lot where the vampire's outside the window.
I don't think so.
Yeah. That's why, yeah.
Bit of a coincidence, maybe.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but
yeah.
But
I really just, from an acting standpoint, from a dialogue, and just filmmaking standpoint, I really loved her confession scene.
Yes.
Kind of
I was just going to bring that up.
In the middle of the episode. Just
so good.
Great performances from both of them. That scene really jumped out at me. And like, if you did something like that and you carried that for 20 years, whatever, like, how do you go about confessing something like that? You know?
Yeah.
Like, and it's just, and how do you react to someone saying that? Like, is he kind of feigning the outrage that he gives her at the end?
That's a good question.
He's like, stay away from me or something. I don't remember exactly what he says, but he's upset.
Yeah.
I was like, is he, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. And I think that's a good thing. Like, it's not mysterious, but it's, you know, I just wonder if he's reacting that way because he's supposed to, or because that's how he actually feels. I don't know. And Melanie Linsky is just a great actress.
Oh, she's amazing.
I just love her. Yeah. And just it was just very well written as well. It's a great scene. And
yeah, it was like a release valve for tension, but like it wasn't opened all the way.
yeah.
Like it's such an interesting, because like they could have played it up for the highest of drama, but they held back a little bit because it's not finished. Like it's something that's still going to have to be reconciled. And I love that in addition to telling him about it, she kind of, blames him a little bit.
Yeah.
Like in my notes, it's like it's really intense. Like she says, he died because of me. It was what you wanted. We did it together. When I did it, my hand was your hand.
Right.
It's like, that's not going to hold up in court.
Yeah, not so much.
But also like, man, just that is just nuts.
It is.
Yeah.
And I love the writing because it's like, how do you articulate the themes of, and the sensations and everything? Because she's describing something so supernatural that's, something that dictates her entire life, this ability that she has.
Yeah.
And no one else knows about it except Henry, and he's struggling with accepting it, and you know, as anyone would.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do you describe this? And she's trying to take responsibility, but at the same time not lose the only outlet she has for this affliction and this ability that she has. It's a delicate walk, and I think she worded it the best she could. Like, you know, I don't think she could have said much else to soften the blow of this news. And she did a good job, and that's one of like the impressive things about it. The character of Molly did a good job, is what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't know. There's just so much to like about the scene.
I agree. And like, there's other stuff that happened in this episode. Like I neglected to mention when we were talking about the junkyard scene. Like, that's where it's revealed to us just through the radio that Juniper Hill caught fire and the kid escaped.
Yeah.
I love it's just background noise. But it leads into the next episode beautifully. Also, there's that scene where Ruth is talking to Wendell, about the chess pieces and stuff.
Yes.
And it's such a great, like, lead into the next episode, which is by far the best episode of the season in my book.
Strongest episode of the season, yeah.
Yeah. And, like she says, we've had this conversation before, and she says, life used to move forward like people movers at the airport, but somehow I got off it. And she's talking about using the chess pieces as constants, to keep her bearing. And like, just like, I'm going to gush so much about the next episode.
Yeah.
Because it is lost.
Yeah, it is.
It is lost to the fullest extent. Lost by way of Stephen King, which was itself like kind of what Lost was, in a roundabout way.
Right. Lots of circular influence there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. And I can't make that segue because it's spoiler, but let's talk about the schisma and how this episode kind of, in no uncertain terms, feels like it's the closest that we'll get to a connection to the Dark Tower universe.
Yeah.
First of all, Willie and Odin Branch. I don't think that they're in the King canon.
Okay.
but they feel so much like Stephen King characters.
Absolutely.
Like, it's like their characterization and the whole like last 15 minutes of this episode with them talking to Henry in the woods, like, it's exactly why this show works so damn well with me. Like, it could be just, like, the show could be just like Lost by way of Stephen King. With the chess pieces, the constants, like, stuff like that. Like, it could be like that. But having this type of characterization and this type of storyline in it, it feels like Stephen King's writing coming to life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful. What did you think of their introduction and the schisma and everything that happened in the latter 15 minutes of the episode?
Really, really compelling. I think at first I thought when he first comes across them at the campfire was a little bit Deus Ex Machina-ish.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of, I don't want to say a lazy storytelling, but just very, just exposition-y and just kind of, I was a little bit like thrown, I guess, by it, but where it led, I think was ultimately really satisfying and like, really obviously just like drove the story a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it really launched you into the next episode or to the next part of the story. Cause episode 7 is a bit of a bus stop, a bit of a chicane in the story.
Right.
As Stephen King is wont to do.
Yeah.
So beautifully. But I like I said, I loved, I think it's a fun thing that Stephen King likes to do is kind of, he likes to ground his supernaturality, if that's a word. I don't think that's a word.
It is now.
It is now. He kind of likes to ground it. I feel like in like The Shining, that book is so, I haven't read it since I was 13. I need to read it again. There's all this crazy shit going on, but then he just grounds the story. And like when Jack Torrance is going through the history of the Overlook Hotel, and there's like all this, whenever he introduces like the hard science of something, in his stories, I really appreciate that, cause I'm not a supernatural, religious, spiritual kind of person. I love science, and I think he kind of appreciates both techniques. I think it's Lostian. It's a man of science, man of faith thing. It's like
exactly
both things can equally clash and work together. Like some people don't need the explanation for stuff, or they can just follow it through their gut feelings and through their faith and through their spirituality. It just makes sense to them, and they don't need to know about the schism and all that shit. They don't need the science, but then others do. And I think he just, sometimes he doesn't balance it well, but when he balances it well, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And this is like they really gripped me with this part, the whole explanation of the science, all the science terms.
Yeah.
Just kind of, I don't know, it just hooked me in.
Do you totally agree? And one thing that I want to, like, I'm just going to agree with everything you said. I love that. I love that aspect of the writing in this episode specifically. Did you get a Dark Tower vibe off of the schisma discussion and the schisma explanation?
I didn't, like kind of like a doorway thing, which is what I love so much about Dark Tower.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I understand that it's there.
Yeah. Let me read a piece of dialogue.
Okay.
Quote, when they're explaining the schisma to Henry, they say, quote, "All possible pasts, all possible presents, schisma is the sound of the universe trying to reconcile them." Like, that is such a Dark Tower type of thing, and I love it so much. It reminds me of like the Thinny, the God drums. Like it's
beam
just,
quakes.
Yeah, the beam quakes, everything. The beams themselves. Like it's so evocative of Dark Tower. And like when this episode aired, there were a lot of like think pieces online that were like, is this a Dark Tower story in disguise? And like the showrunners were kind of coy about it, and they weren't coy about it, but they were just like, they're like, well, you know, we try to fit in anything we can. And I just appreciate so much that the show went there.
Yeah.
In a certain respect.
It makes you wonder if Castle Rock is on the path of a beam.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And out in the woods is where you're under the path, and it's it just makes you kind of wonder.
Yeah, and then you go in the woods and it's very dark, and then you see, you battle a monster,
right? That you can barely see.
That you can barely see. You see your dead dad, who says some corny line. Oh God, that movie.
And there's a Pennywise sign.
Yeah. and then Roland Deschain, the last gunslinger, who is easily dispatched by the monster in the woods that you can't see.
Right.
Tells the kid that he's brave.
Right.
For reaching for the gun and not getting it. Anyway, we're okay. We're not bitter.
No.
But yeah, what I loved about the evolution of this scene with the whole schisma and everything, like I have in my notes, this kind of thing, the filter and the mystery surrounding the schisma is so, it's like Lost level sci-fi mystery television.
Yeah.
And I meant that in the highest possible compliments. Like, it is so captivating and engrossing and creepy as all hell. Like,
yeah.
I love the evolution of this scene because Henry just met these men in the woods while searching for answers about his father and his past. He's clearly emotionally kind of compromised. He's considering going into this filter that these strangers created in an RV.
Yeah.
And when he goes in, and it's revealed that, whichever one is the deaf one,
Odin.
Yeah. He's he says something to him and Henry's like, you made yourself deaf? And then it's so creepy the way he's not deaf, perfect. And then he closes it it's so Stephen King and it's so great.
Very.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. And it really communicates the pain of being in the filter so well through the sound and Andre Holland's performance and while he's cringing so hard.
Totally.
So the end of the episode comes and let's talk about the scene with Pangborn and the kid outside of the house.
Yes.
So first of all, anything more about the schisma?
No.
So the ending, it's Alan comes, tells the kid that the truck will be there in the morning. And then this is why I said that I think you may have misread it, because the kid says it'll be a monument to Warden Lacey, to everyone who helped put me in that cage.
Okay.
Yeah. And then that's when Alan sees blood, a trail of blood leading from the house to it. And then after he sees that, the kid looks at him and he's like, why would you leave me in that trunk, Sheriff? And Alan goes in, sees evidence of a struggle and violence, and then end of episode.
Yeah.
I was so floored by that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to get us primed for the next episode. And it's so great to see, it feels like the kid playing a hand. He is effectively terrified Pangborn into thinking that the woman he loves is in mortal danger or possibly dead by giving him a bullshit errand.
Yeah.
So that he can, because he is bitter about, being locked in a cage for 27 years.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about the ending and everything?
Yeah, I didn't really know how to react to it, I think. It just kind of threw me a little bit. I wish I had more to say about it because I didn't react the way you did to it because didn't. It just kind of threw me, unfortunately.
Okay. Did my read of it clear it up for you or
Definitely.
make you more interested in it?
Definitely,
okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
So should we go on to the best episode of the season?
Yes.
Okay. And the most Lostian episode of the season?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so last episode for this episode of the podcast is episode 7, The Queen, aired August 22nd on Hulu. Greg Yatanis was the director, and Sam Shaw, who I believe is one of the showrunners, was the writer of it.
Okay.
It's called The Queen. Premises: memories haunt Ruth Deaver. So this episode opens with just Ruth in is it an attic or garage? Like an attached garage?
It's like a separate garage,
Okay.
work room.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's panicking and she's got a gun, and then we see her fire the gun and then cut to next scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I love about I love so much about this episode. Like I said, we're going to gush on this episode.
Mm-hmm.
I love the storytelling techniques and the tricks that it pulls, because we're seeing scenes that occurred throughout the first 6 episodes in different contexts and from Ruth's point of view. And it's really terrific storytelling as it jumps through time, and you really get a handle of like her chronology and her, like what her version of her time hopping was.
Just her perspective.
Her perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So great.
Mm-hmm. I think what jumps out about the episode is all that, but like I think from a creative standpoint, like it must have been so challenging to edit this episode.
I can imagine.
The editing is just, that's one of the most incredible things about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I struggle to focus on or notice when I watch movies and television, is the editing. But I think when it's really good like this, with a difficult story to tell and different timelines coming together, you really find a way to appreciate it, and it jumps out at you. So the editing was money in this episode.
Absolutely.
Amongst many other things.
Yes.
Sissy is like a tour de force for Sissy Spacek.
Oh my God. Like, I forgot, she wasn't nominated
for
an Emmy.
No.
But I so wish she was. Like, she deserved, like, that was an incredible performance.
Absolutely.
And like, just, I put in my notes, like, seeing her going through the house, through time and memories, and placing these chess pieces throughout the house, the way the music is playing throughout it, like, everything works together so well, and it's so tragic the way everything plays out in this episode. It's such a beautifully constructed episode. And it really solidifies what makes Castle Rock, this is going to be a big statement, one of the best representations of Stephen King's work, and more specifically his style of storytelling on screen. And it's funny because I say that, and it's a big statement and everything. And you can argue that the storytelling, well, okay, this is going to be really reductive, and patently inaccurate, but it's kind of a cribbed storytelling technique from Lost. Like,
yeah,
this is The Constant, essentially.
Right.
But then again, also The Constant, I believe, I haven't read it or anything, but I believe it's basically like Slaughterhouse-5 by Kurt Vonnegut. I think that's the type of story that's told in that.
Okay.
I think so. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know how to piece this together, because there's so much that all of it's just going to be like, oh, that was a really good scene.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of the better creative choices amongst all of the great creative choices was that Sissy Spacek played Ruth in every scene. So like different times where she was 30 years old, it's still 60-year-old Sissy Spacek playing in that. Like, so it's like she's traveling through time.
Yes. And there's one scene where, and I love, like, technically speaking, like from a technical perspective, this was an amazing sequence. Like, and it's a simple, like, a simple trick to do, but like, there's a scene where it's a flashback to her being like 30, and she is sitting at her, like, a vanity, and like, you see 30-year-old Ruth in the reflection, and you have, you're kind of at her, like, from her shoulder, and the camera pans across, and then as you, like, okay, yeah, so it's the scene where Ruth is taking young Henry's temperature, and it opens on a mirror showing young Ruth talking to Henry. The camera pans over to Henry, then to Ruth on the bed, played by Sissy Spacek. It's all in one take, very fluid. And it's just like, it goes from the reflection of the 30-year-old to Sissy Spacek on the bed talking, and it's just all one continuous thing. I love that. Yeah, I just thought that was really great. Before we get too deep into this, there are a couple of Stephen King references that I want to bring up. There is a news on the TV, there's news that's references Derry.
Okay.
I think they're talking about the Juniper Hill fire and how they had to get fire department from Derry to come and fight the fire.
Okay.
And one of my favorite blatant like references and everything was when she is freaking out and she tells Wendell, like she gives Wendell money and she's like, when was the last time I gave you a present? Go take the bus to the mall in Chester's Mill. And yeah, I was like, oh, an Under the Dome reference. That's awesome. And, like it made me think that if there were any novel that deserved a Hulu event series adaptation, in the vein of 11/22/63 or Castle Rock, it's Under the Dome.
Yeah, that'd be a good place for it to land.
Yep. Yeah. So there's the whole thing with Ruth is looking for bullets. Like cause, the kid is in the house and he is being his creepy self and he's kind of patterning himself after Matthew Deaver.
Yeah.
And like she's confusing him with her or him with him.
Yeah.
And she's trying to find the bullets to defend herself and everything. And she's trying to remember where the bullets were. There's one scene where she sees a vision or a memory. She's in a memory with Matthew and he's basically her subconscious personified, telling her that she had a chance to leave and she didn't leave. She could have left with Alan and she didn't do it, and there's no way to change that and everything. And like he's just basically berating her for her poor decisions and everything. And she's like, "You're just my subconscious or whatever. Tell me where the keys or where the bullets are." And then she finds out where the bullets are. They were in the case that he buried the dog. And
oh, right.
Yeah.
She did, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just this episode.
I like how it also, it, instead of just hearing about stories of, Matthew Deaver being kind of losing his mind, we get to see it. Like the picnic scene.
Yes,
with the gun and everything. Scene. Like it's understandable that she's, she was so protective of Henry, and you understand the trauma she went through being the wife of a man like that.
Yeah.
And it really made you sympathize with her, and it made you, cause I feel like Henry is not a very likable character.
Right.
He's just kind of a dick. And this episode, while it's about Ruth, I think it tells you a lot about Henry as well, and why he is the way he is.
Yeah, like there's that scene where she's in her memory, she's remembering, and Matthew's about to take Henry out to the woods again to try to hear the voice of God, to hear the schisma. And she's like, she tells Henry, like, just tell him that you hear it. Like,
right.
It's just, it really informs like how fucked up his childhood was.
Yeah. And like, it's obviously the episode is so much about developing the character of Ruth, but through that, it develops all the other characters too. It almost develops just as much about Matthew Deaver as it does her. And yeah, I mean, it tells like, a 10-year-old kid, 12-year-old, however old he was, shouldn't have to worry about, how crazy his dad is.
Right.
He shouldn't have to tiptoe around his dad, and the mother subsequently should not have to tell him to do that.
Right.
It informs a lot about their family dynamic, and
totally.
Really, really, really tragic. It's an unfortunate thing, and you want to, as a spouse, you want to stand by your spouse and get them through everything. But she was at a point where she should have, taken Henry and left.
Yeah.
And she didn't. And I think it's no wonder that her mind has been so damaged. Her mind is running away from her. I don't think Alzheimer's dementia is a genetic thing. It just happens. It's not supernatural, or it's not the result of a hard life. But if it were, you could understand why she has it.
Yeah.
I guess I'll put it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's also a short scene with Molly coming up to the house that I want to touch on. So she comes to the house. She's searching for Henry. She's frantic. And And I love that scene because Ruth is, it's a fun, like, I use fun lightly, but it's a fascinating scene because it's two women who are in their own horror story that is could not be more different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Molly is presumably having these, visions of Henry in the filter, and she needs to go save him and everything, while Ruth is being hunted, or like she's trapped in a house with evil, and she's kind of going through her mind, like she's literally losing her mind. Not to put too fine a point on it, but one thing that I really love about this scene, and it's a stupid thing to love about it, is that they pull off the quintessential time travel line. Basically, Ruth opens the door, and what I love about this also is that it doesn't play like how much, like it doesn't play up her confusion. Like, it's just simple that Molly's freaking out and she's saying, "Where's Henry? We need to find Henry," and everything. And then Ruth, by saying the quintessential time travel line of "When are we?" It's her, like, it's not like a, like, "When are we?" kind of time travel thing. It's "When are we?" because I'm losing control of my sense of time. Right. And you're telling me about my son. You're frantically telling me that we need to search for my son who was missing when he was a kid. So am I back in 1991 or is it now? Like, when are we? Yeah. And it's so great how it subverts what is a joke of a time travel line and repurposes it for an intense emotional episode.
Right. It's an interesting use of that line.
Absolutely.
It's usually a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, go ahead, sorry.
What was I going to say? I think not just this episode, but throughout the show, I think this is probably one of the best, if not the best, representations of what it's like to have dementia and or Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can't really know what that's like until you have it.
Right.
But you never want to have it. You don't want to know what it's like, but so it's hard to hard to translate. It's hard to depict. Right. And I think what's so great about it is Sissy Spacek's performance, but just the way that it's woven together. I think, I don't know, like the whole part where she's Pangborn and Henry are having an argument, and she kind of enters, and it's where Henry's confronting Alan Pangborn about moving his dad's body and how Pangborn signed the piece of paper to have it done for her. You know, he's like, "What else have you been signing her name for, or whatever?" Yeah. And she comes in and like, you know, in the past episode, she comes in and she's like, "Oh, the sheets." Yeah. And we have context for that now.
Exactly.
But it's like, it just makes me, it really solidified, or like kind of just represented to me what it can be like to be literally you're contextualizing a moment in a certain time. Like, I would be sitting on this couch right now and I'm talking to 32-year-old Matt Hurt, and I look over here and then I look back and you're 55 years old. I'm like, what? And it's like just how jarring and insane that must be to experience. And then you're like, no, it's 2035. It's not 2019. What are you talking about? Right. And it's like, you just jump 16 years and everything's different. Like, that's, I put myself in that situation, and like, it has to be like more than anything scary. Like, we think of it as confusing, but that would scare the shit out of me.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
If I just look over you and you've aged 25 years in the blink of an eye, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that would just, and I think this show represents that really well. And it's depicted to the nth degree in this episode. Yeah. And that's one thing that I will forever hold this season of this show in high esteem for. Absolutely agree. Yeah. And to kind of go back to to kind of reiterate my point that the depiction of dementia and Alzheimer's and everything, like, that is another reason why this show is such a great representation of what makes King's writing so
great and have such a lasting effect. It's that depiction of this terrifying, like it's simply put, it is a terrifying idea that like this, like having this illness is absolutely terrifying.
Right.
And why I say that it's such a great representation of King's like writing style and like what makes King so great as a writer is that like this reminds me, like your point about it being such a great depiction of, and such an honest depiction of dementia and Alzheimer's, is that it reminds me that like why I think Pet Sematary is one of King's best books and why it's so terrifying. Because it's not terrifying because a cat comes back to life. It's not terrifying because the Micmac burying ground brings people, like, it's not terrifying because sometimes dead is better. It's terrifying because the story, like Louis Creed's descent into madness and his actions after facing a traumatic experience is depicted so authentically in Pet Sematary. Like, when I read that book, I'm not terrified because things come back to life. I'm terrified because it puts me in a position to think what it would be like if I lost people that are the like closest people to me.
Absolutely.
And it makes me question, like, how far would I go with limited information to bring people back? And it pulls into my mind so many questions, and it's just the power of his writing. And this episode is a good indication of that because it puts you into Ruth's mental state, her point of view. And it is, like you said, it is absolutely terrifying. Like, it's not terrifying because she's trapped in a house with someone who could potentially murder her or is like evil incarnate. It's terrifying because she's afflicted with this illness, and that's the deepest fear you can impart on an audience, is the fear of like putting you in the position of thinking like, what would life be like if you had this? Like, what if this was you?
Yeah.
And that's one thing, that's what I just love about Stephen King in general, is like he puts you in the character's position. And it's funny, like we're talking about how great Stephen King is. He didn't write the episode.
Yeah, right.
But it is a great indicator of what makes Stephen King great. And like it's something that they hit the nail on the head with.
Totally.
So there is a, okay, so I was wondering, when the kid is making Ruth food and he gives her sedative and he's kind of like trying to like play nice and everything. It's like, on one hand, cause the whole time she's confusing him with Matthew.
Yeah.
And on one hand, it feels like he's maybe possessed by Matthew, or he's under some kind of trance or what have you. But on the other hand, it seems like he's working to manipulate things to orchestrate Pangborn's death.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like that read on it would fit with the whole chess motif, that it's going for. But even with the like supernatural overtones, it just seems like it's like he's looking dozens of moves ahead instead of like 3 moves ahead.
Right.
So I don't like, how did you feel about that? Did you feel like he was orchestrating things in a certain way, or was it just like,
I mean, clearly he was, but the reason is why? Does he just want revenge on Pangborn, or is it because he's fucking evil? Like, I don't know. That's again, to reference my frustration with that part of the story. I don't know. That it was fascinating to see. Like, I like to think that it was him orchestrating revenge against Pangborn. Like Pangborn is the true evil, or, you know, he bet on the wrong horse. with Warden Lacey over the kid. I don't know, something like that. But yeah, it's weird how how can he read that? How is that he's able to read the situation of what's going through her mind, and the fact that she's confusing him with Matthew, and it's a wicked supernatural thing,
right,
to witness.
And when she finds out, when she remembers where the bullets are and she goes to dig them up, because earlier in the episode we see New Year's Eve, and we see Pangborn, like, the dog dies, like the dog gets hit by a car or a truck, and it's referenced in an early episode that he buried the dog, and, you know, she wants him to make sure that it's not coming back to life.
Right.
But she confuses it with another dog that she had. Pug, is the dog's name. And, like, when she goes out to dig up the dog in the suitcase, there's a dog right next to her that's digging with her. And, like, I would need to watch it again, but I kind of wonder if that's, like, another manifestation of her memory. Like, her mind is trying to keep her at ease by it's
another constant.
Yeah. Well,
the dead dog is another constant. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, I feel like it's her, her mind is creating this dog next to her, digging with her as a comfort because she's in a frantic, stressful thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's talk about the gunshots. Such an amazing way to tie together so much, so much story, because, like, you kind of know that, like, the way everything's falling into place, you know it's coming, but you don't want it to come. So you're, like, in my head, like, I'm blocking it out. I'm like, I don't want this to happen. I know what's happening. Like, I'm finally getting caught up with what's going on. I don't want this to happen. And then she shoots Alan Pangborn and he's dying. It's gut wrenching.
So tragic.
So tragic.
Yes.
And oh God. And, like, that, then after that, like, the last scene of the episode is she's drawing a bath and she's getting dressed, and, like, the music is like all stringy and emotional is what I have in my notes. And it's the day, like, she's back in time when Alan returned, and it's the day, like, I pitch perfect writing. Like, it's so great because we've got it seated in an earlier episode that he's talking about how, and it's reiterated earlier in this episode as well, where he's talking about how he came back after a neighbor said that he heard gunshots in her house. So, like, you get this supernatural thing where she's jumping through time. She fires the gun back in time, essentially, which causes the neighbor to call Alan, which causes him to come back, which causes him to eventually get killed by her.
Right.
Just, it's so mind-bendy and beautiful. And then you get the payoff of his recounting of what happened when he came back, because he's like, she looked like she'd been through hell and back, and she hugged me and told me not to leave. And, like, you get the context of that in this episode, and it's such a beautiful way to
it really is.
end the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the final shot of the episode is focusing on two chess pieces behind Ruth, just showing that she's back. Like, that's her constant. And one of the chess pieces is tipped on its side.
Totally.
It's so great.
It really is. And just the analogy of the title being the queen.
Yeah.
And in chess, the queen can go anywhere.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Dude.
The queen can travel across the whole board.
That just blew my mind.
I figured you already knew that.
No.
I was wondering if you picked up on that. Yeah.
Oh my God. That really just, I just got a whole new appreciation to the, like, wow. Well, that's amazing.
Pangborn is kind of her knight in shining armor, and a knight can move forward and sideways. Isn't that right? A knight can go, or is that the rook goes in the L shape? Is that right?
Rook.
Boy.
Is the rook the castle? Is the knight the horsey?
I don't remember.
Okay, which one's the nipple?
That's the pawn.
No. The erect nipple. The one that can go diagonal.
That's the queen.
No. Queen can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, there's the two, like, you got queen and king, and then you got the two on the side, the two side pieces that go diagonal.
Jeez, I don't remember.
And then you have the castles, which can go just...
I never really played chess much. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
Anyways. I don't know.
Chess cast?
Oh, God. No. But I don't know. I wonder if there's an analogy in there somewhere for him being sort of a knight in shining armor.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and you are much smarter than we are, let us know if we're missing something.
Yeah.
And let me know what the erect nipple is, because that's the only way I know how to do it. But yeah, but the whole idea of the queen being the piece that can move around like in any way, in any direction, that just blew my mind. That's really cool. So those are our reviews of Harvest Filter and the Queen, episodes 5 through 7 of season 1 of Castle Rock. And next time on the podcast, we've said this before, we have so much stuff that we can go through in this podcast because it's Stephen King, and Stephen King is a god amongst men and one of the most prolific creators of stories, like one of the most prolific storytellers in our lifetime. Yeah. In ever, maybe. Right. But, so we have so many ways, but next episode, we will be reviewing the last 3 episodes of Castle Rock season 1. That's Past Perfect, which has such a great, it has like a mini episode within it. And I love that episode. Then Henry Deaver, episode 9, and the season finale, Romans. It's going to be a big episode that should be up next week on the podcast. And then I think after that, we will have to start doing our Pet Cemetery stuff. Word. Super excited to get into that.
I'm looking forward to that myself.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. So stay tuned to that. Once again, thank you guys for your patience as we work through our little hiatus and everything. So thank you. I was trying to think of another string of Stephen King
Let's end it.
I'm really glad that we could have this revival of a podcast here. Yeah. Me too. Yeah, so just so you guys know, we're not just a couple bags of bones, or we're not just a bag of bones here. We are back and we are alive. So
The Mist.
Yeah.
I can't.
God. So anyway, take a stand. Okay, thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Please listen next time, despite this train wreck of an ending. But thank you guys. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to towerjunkiespod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/towerjunkiespod and follow us on Twitter at towerjunkiespod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at towerjunkiespod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktober.irvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.